right, welcome everybody. We are so happy to see you, happy to have you here. Well, you see us, we might not see you at this point, but I want to welcome everyone to this very fortuitous and brand new event for the National Organization for Medical Intuition. My name is Wendy Coulter. I am the president of this organization, and we're going to do some board introductions in a moment. But what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about some housekeeping. What's going to happen? We've got a lot to cover. And what we will cover is what is the National Organization for Medical Intuition? Why did we create it? What we've achieved so far, what's coming up, and we're going to talk a little bit about what NOMI's perspective is on medical intuition, why it should be part of healthcare as well. We'll talk about our research, and we will also be introducing our special guest, Midge Murphy, who will be talking with us about the professional practice of medical intuition, risk liability, and things like that. Very important topic for us. And Midge is here. She's also on our advisory board. So there will be time for question and answer. And we want to point out the QA window in your on your desktop there on your webinar. Go ahead and put your questions in there. We really want to hear from you. What's important to you? What do you want from us? And what would you like to know? We may not have time to get to every question, but if we don't, you can contact us at nomimedicalintuition.org, and we'll get back to you as well. We have over 300 people joining us from all over the world and all over the country here in the US, and we're just delighted. We have people from a wide variety of fields, medical practitioners, healthcare practitioners, medical intuitives, obviously, and medical intuitive educators, and people who are just curious about what the heck this is and what we're talking about and how it impacts them. So we're just very grateful to have you here. We do have a chat for you, so please use the chat. And in the chat, please tell us where you're from and what you do and what brought you here. We'd love to see that from you, so please join us there. I'm going to start with board introductions. So starting with our Vice President and Secretary, Ms. Kay Randall May, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Wendy, and hello to everyone. I welcome you all to our NOMI virtual open house. I'm Kay Randall May, and my background is that I have been a professional intuitive for a little over 40 years. And as such, it's been a fascinating journey. I was recognized in 1998 in the pantheon of medical intuitives at that time by Good Housekeeping magazine, who listed me in the who's who of medical intuition. And in 2004, I was certified as a medical intuitive by Norm Shealy and Carolyn Miss. However, I believe that my greatest opportunity in medical intuition, aside from talking to so many of you as clients, has been to be part of NOMI. I am one of the first, actually. I'm a founding member of NOMI, and as such have been able to be in the process of our unfoldment this entire time. The major reason I have done so is because I have a vision that we can bring medical intuition into whole person healthcare in my lifetime. And I am so happy that you're here with us today as we are forming a greater community of people interested in medical intuition and practicing it to help make that vision come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. I'd like to introduce Maria Gentili, our treasurer.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Maria Gentili and I'm a retired osteopathic physician in Denver, Colorado, and a medical intuitive for the past 3 years, certified by the Practical Path. I'm also one of the founding members of NOMI and currently serve on the NOMI board of directors as treasurer. NOMI is very important to me because it gives me access to a group of like-minded people. As a physician and a medical intuitive myself, I completely resonate with NOMI's mission and vision to move medical intuition into mainstream medicine and to have medical intuitives serve as standard members of the healthcare team. So it's with the help and support of people like you that we'll be able to advance this mission. So thank you all for being here today, and welcome to NOMI's virtual open house.
Thank you, Maria. All right, Elizabeth Thorson, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Thorson. I've been a medical intuitive for over 25 years, but I've also worked in traditional healthcare in critical care. And I had the incredible opportunity to work with some very open-minded healthcare team members who were open to my skill set. So I've known for a long time that medical intuition can work side by side in the traditional system. I joined NOMI primarily for community. I was finding as a professional there wasn't anything out there like that for me. And so that's been a joy for me to work with all these fabulous men and women on this board. One of the things that I think is most important about the organization is that we have the opportunity to shape the profession going forward. And there's never been that opportunity really before to do it not just nationally, but also internationally, as we're seeing from some of the attendees here. I think the most important thing for me as a medical intuitive and being a member is NOMI is working to legitimize the profession and to help it stand alone side by side with traditional medical healthcare. And I think that's probably one of the most important reasons to be a member of this organization. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I'm going to introduce Director Dr. Lloyd Costello.
Thank you, Wendy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to NOMI's Open House. My name is Lloyd Costello, and I'm a family medicine doctor with my own private practice near Lake Arrowhead in California. I completed my residency training in family medicine in 1986, and I'm board certified in both family medicine and holistic medicine. I'm currently in the process of training to be a certified medical intuitive. I joined NOMI because I believe that medical intuition adds a valuable tool to our toolbox and that medical intuitives can provide critical information regarding a patient's condition and that they should be integrated into our traditional healthcare teams. Being a part of NOMI has allowed me to be a part of the movement towards legitimizing and recognizing that medical intuitives can contribute significantly towards a patient's whole health and well-being. I'm excited that you're joining us today, and I hope that you learn more about medical intuition and medical intuitives and get answers to any questions that you may have. So again, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Lloyd. And Jim Patterson, one of our newer directors, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name is Jim Patterson. Happy Sunday, and thanks for joining us. So, my background is a little different 45 years in clinical laboratory medicine in roles of research and development, sales and marketing, career counseling, and recruiting. And so, why know me and why did I join? And for me, it's a very personal story, and I look forward to telling that later on in the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And Tracy Poff, our most recent director and appointee to the board. Tracy, welcome.
As Wendy said, I just recently joined the board and delighted to do so because medical intuition is central to my family's management of our health. My background is in business, and it was my encounter with medical intuition that shifted the trajectory of my life. My first encounter sparked a transformation in my worldview, led to years of informal study, followed by formal study, including in spiritual psychology and most recently a PhD in transpersonal psychology, where I had the great opportunity to conduct what is seemingly the very first in-depth study about the lived experience of medical intuitives. So I'm delighted to be part of the board and forward the mission of raising awareness about this incredibly valuable skill. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I want to point out that Tracy's research is available to read. It is on the NOMI website under our research page, and it's invaluable information. I will introduce myself and then I'll introduce Midge briefly, but you'll get to know her a little later. My name again is Wendy Coulter. I am the president and a founding member of this organization. I've been a medical intuitive, professional medical intuitive for about 20 years, and I'm also a master certified wellness coach. I'm also the CEO of the Practical Path, which is an educational organization. My research on medical intuition is published in the Journal of Integrative and Complementary Medicine, and that was a real thrill too, because there's not a lot of research on medical intuition, and we always want more. And I'm the author of a book called Essentials of Medical Intuition: A Visionary Path to Wellness. What brought me to NOMI was an understanding, which I think all medical intuitives share, that the value of medical intuition is there for clinicians, for patients, for clients, for everyone. And I'm just thrilled that this idea is opening minds in healthcare and that NOMI is at the forefront of this very important paradigm shift in healthcare. So I think everybody on the board has really echoed that. And we're just really delighted and thrilled for you to be here. And we can't wait to tell you more about this. Briefly, I will introduce Midge and I'll give her the longer introduction later. Midge, do you want to say a word or two?
Hi, everyone. I'm Midge Murphy, and very happy to be here and wanting to share some what I think is very valuable information for anyone who is interested in becoming a medical intuitive, who's interested in maybe engaging the services of a medical intuitive, or wants to have a practice and integrate into the healthcare system. And my background, I am an energy healing practitioner myself, and I actually studied with Norm Shealy and Carolyn Mace years ago. I'm not a medical intuitive, but I am an intuitive. And so I think legitimizing this field is important. And my background is in ethics and legal issues and risk management in the practice of and training in energy healing and biofield practices. So I think that's where I can contribute, being a bridge between two worlds, because we do have to operate in the current legal and regulatory framework that governs healthcare professionals.
Thank you, Midge. And Midge has been on our advisory board since the beginning and has been a huge help to us. We are going to start the show. So here comes the slideshow. Now, again, please put your questions into the QA. We would love to uh, answer them towards the end of the presentation. All right. Here's how we're going to start, and this is one of the foundations: from ancient mystics and seers to world cultural traditions to contemporary biofield practices, intuitive evaluations of the physical body and biofield, uh, and the subtle energy field or the biofield to support and enhance health and wellness have been a unique and important part of the human experience. Although medical intuition uses the word medical, it is not to be construed as the practice of medicine, psychotherapy, or any other licensed healthcare practice, and is not a substitute or replacement for the services of licensed healthcare providers. Our commitment is that NOMI recognizes and honors the deep roots of medical intuition and the traditions and beliefs of the indigenous and non-Western cultures. These practices have long contributed to the foundations of holistic health. NOMI is committed to fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion within our community by establishing a collaborative worldwide network where medical intuitives can share knowledge and work together to achieve our goal of integrating medical intuition into mainstream healthcare. By valuing the heritage of medical intuition and promoting ethical practices, we strive to build an inclusive and supportive environment. NOMI's mission and vision, we started with that because we didn't have an organization and we needed to think about the future. The National Organization for Medical Intuition is dedicated to the advancement of professional medical intuition. We strive to assure the safety and well-being of the public and aim to integrate medical intuition into all forms of healthcare. We envision a world where medical intuitive practitioners are accepted in clinical healthcare and in private practice and accessible to everyone. And that vision we hope you all share, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what is NOMI? NOMI exists to promote the field of medical intuition to the public, to healthcare organizations, eventually to legislators and other stakeholders so that we can raise the profile of medical intuition and bring medical intuitives into healthcare. We provide value to our membership through career and business building opportunities, educational materials, community building, research, affiliate discounts, and much more. And we'll go over all of the membership benefits later in the program. It's important for everyone to understand that NOMI is not a certifying or regulatory body for the practices of professional medical intuitives and was not created as such. We are members, organizational members of the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine, the TCIH Coalition, the Energy Medicine Professional Association, and others. And we look to expand NOMI's collaboration with these organizations and more. Where we began. Some of us on our board are founding members. It was a very exciting time to discuss what medical intuition is and how we do it together, how we work on it, who we've worked with. And it was just lovely to meet with this core group. In 2020, a working group of professional medical intuitives began discussions on the use of medical intuition in healthcare. And what's really interesting about this core group is that we all came from a different perspective and different traditions of medical intuition, but we had a common goal. And our aim was to gather information on the skills and practices of professional medical intuitives and to raise the understanding of the value of medical intuition by both healthcare providers and the public. And in 2022, NOMI incorporated as a nonprofit 501c6 member benefit organization. We are brand new, you guys. This is a fledgling nonprofit, and we're delighted that, of course, you're here to learn more about us and join us. So, what is medical intuition? Let's talk about NOMI's perspective on this really unique and important skill set. There are some definitions out there. Here's NOMI's definition. Medical intuition is a process of intuitive observation and assessment of the physical body and biofield, meaning the aura and chakra system, designed to support whole person health and well-being in body, mind, and spirit. That's NOMI's definition. It's kind of where we're going to go in this presentation today and explain why we feel this way. But there are some other definitions too from many sources, and here's an important source. We are part of the emerging fields of complementary and alternative medicine, and what the new term there is complementary and integrative health. And that is where we see ourselves fitting in. So here's that earlier definition. In 2005, the Institute of Medicine in Washington, D.C., commissioned a report from the Committee on the Use of Complementary and Alternative Medicine by the American public, and they looked at a ton of really interesting practices, including many biofield practices. And here is their definition of what a medical intuitive does. The utilization of a focused, intuitive instinct to diagnose or read energetic and frequency information in and around the human body. Now, that word diagnose is a loaded word, and we're going to talk with Midge about that as we get into the program. But what we're talking about here is the perception of energy frequencies in the physical body and in the biofield, which surrounds the body and moves through the body as well. Some of you already know the background about medical intuition, but here's a brief history. In the early 20th century, medical intuitive pioneer Edgar Cayce utilized his intuition as a powerful and accurate standalone health assessment skill, and he performed over 8,000 health readings with an estimated 85% accuracy rate, which was really considered to be even higher than the physicians of the era to get. In 1985, Dr. Norman Shealy began research with Carolyn Mace for her remote intuitive evaluations of his patients' anatomy, physiology, and biofield for physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual information relating to their health issues. And he gauged Carolyn Mace's accuracy at 93%, which was really the highest anyone had ever seen or considered. And together they coined the term medical intuitive. Now, through their practices, their research, and their writings, Edgar Cayce and Carolyn Mace established some of the first foundational competencies for the field. And that is where NOMI has begun. So, in accordance with these practices of these seminal field leaders, NOMI defines medical intuition as an intuitive assessment skill that can be practiced separately from any intervention, treatment, or healing service. So let's talk about why we think that. And I'm going to invite Dr. Lloyd Costello to join us. And let's talk a little bit, Dr. Lloyd, about why we want medical intuition, why we use medical intuition in this way, and why we define it in this way. And also, from the healthcare perspective, why is that valuable?
Hey, thank you, Wendy. For clients and patients, medical intuition can help eliminate the underlying causes that may be driving physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual imbalances. Medical intuition can provide insights into the body systems, including the physical body and the biofield, to identify potential physical issues, emotional or mental energetic patterns, life history experiences, and more. It can also help people become more aware and empowered in their own wellness journey so that they can gain a deeper understanding of whole person health. For healthcare professionals, uh, medical intuition can be really helpful for those cases which have not responded favorably to conventional medical care, such as long COVID, chronic infections, idiopathic conditions, and others. Medical intuition can provide clarity regarding the underlying causes of patient health issues, including atypical or unusual cases. It can also expand the range of potential treatment options with possible solutions that may be complementary or supportive of traditional care. In addition, medical intuition can evaluate early and present life experiences that could be influencing a patient's health and emotional factors. And it can also avoid unnecessary testing and decrease costs with more focused and efficient testing and individualized treatment plans. For healthcare professionals, medical intuition can also help promote trust and communication between the patient and their healthcare provider. Medical intuition is relevant to any life stage, including pre-birth, neonatal, pediatric, adolescent, adulthood, and geriatric. It can gather information from non-responsive, non-communicative, or even comatose patients. And it can be used independently of any intervention, treatment, or healing service. Medical intuition is a powerful tool in its own right and independent of other modalities. A medical intuitive assessment, when performed separately from specific interventions, offers physicians valuable and unbiased insights. It allows us to expand our understanding of the patient's condition without the influence of any single modality. Its role as a standalone skill ensures that all potential healing avenues can be explored. It also maximizes the chances of achieving optimal patient outcomes. It allows medical intuitives to integrate into any healthcare setting and build a bridge between the medical community's needs and medical intuition.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. What do you feel are the most important reasons to integrate medical intuitives into traditional healthcare?
Well, we talked about a few of these things, but I think from my own perspective, there are three huge areas that I think medical intuition can be valuable. One is in the cases where the root cause of patients' physical symptoms are emotional or spiritual and not physical. From a traditional perspective, that information would be hard for me to access. A lot of times, or a number of times, when patients have physical symptoms, the root cause is really based on emotional trauma or childhood experiences. And those childhood experiences or emotional trauma manifest as physical symptoms. In a traditional practice, we would be looking at getting tests or doing imaging studies to try to evaluate that. But if it's an emotional cause, then our whole focus is going to shift into a different route. Instead of ordering tests, I might be looking at referring patients to see a counselor or help them to work through some of their emotional issues. And so that's a huge shift in how we would evaluate these patients. So I think that's a powerful incentive.
Yeah, and I just want to say something about that. Medical intuitives are traditionally looked at not only at the physical, but also the emotional components that can drive illness. So thank you for sharing that. We do also, I think every medical intuitive would agree.
Yeah, a second issue has to do with treatment and specifically medications. The state of the art right now in terms of prescribing medications is really not very scientific. It's an educated guess. When we decide about which medicine to try for a patient, it involves a decision pattern that involves a lot of different factors, including whether a patient can even pay for a medication. So we have to look at their insurance. We have to look at the possibility of potential side effects. And so it's really not very scientific in the way that we look at it. Um, a medical intuitive can look at specific treatment options, especially medication options, and let us know whether or not that's a good fit for the patient. Um, Normally, we would have to do informed consent, obtain informed consent from a patient, which really involves telling them what all the potential side effects are. And then we ask that patient to let us know if they experience those side effects. So, that also involves time and energy from the staff, from the patient, from the doctor. And so, if we have a more focused approach where we can have a medical intuitive test a particular medication, that saves us so much time and energy and avoids unnecessary adverse effects from a particular patient. So that's, I think, another huge benefit.
Would there be a cost savings involved with that as well?
Oh, of course, the cost and time for a nurse or a receptionist to take a message, the time for the doctor to call that patient back, um, medications that patients have adverse side effects from, the cost that they have to spend for that medication. So there's a huge cost savings in just that as well.
Wonderful. And anything else you want to share with us as a medical doctor and also studying to be a medical intuitive? We know that there's issues that Midge will cover for us in regards to that. But what is your perspective as a medical doctor who also understands this?
Like we talked about before, I think it's a huge benefit to have that access to that kind of information that we normally wouldn't have access to. Uh, there's huge cost savings for everyone involved. It's a win-win-win, including the insurance companies. If I'm going to order a test or go for a treatment plan, and I can get some additional information from a medical intuitive that would help me avoid a particular test, that's a cost savings. And it
Wonderful.
also, for the patient, it's a cost savings not having to pay copays for tests or medications.
Got
Um,
it.
Additionally, it can help with referrals. It's like, do I refer somebody to a complementary, provider, somebody that provides an additional service that, I'm not familiar with. So just a lot of benefits, I think, and I would encourage, any healthcare provider to consider using a medical intuitive in their own practice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lloyd. That was really illuminating, and we really appreciate the physician's perspective on this skill set. I mentioned that we were going to share some case studies, and I'm so excited. We're going to have our board member Jim Patterson talk about his experience with medical intuition. Our board member Tracy Poff is going to talk about her experience in her own family. And Kay is going to relate a really interesting story about a dentist she worked with. And I have a story about a case study about a client that had memory stored in her body, which is one of the things that we know about medical intuition. So I'm going to ask the board members who are going to be sharing stories to go ahead and come back on screen. And I think, Kay, we need your video, and there we are. So let's start with Jim. Jim, tell us your story about
Sure.
how medical intuition worked for
Sure.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. So my story begins quite a while ago when I was around 13 years old, and I developed stomach discomfort. Didn't know what it was, and went to the doctor, had a thorough workup, and the conclusion was that it was stress, it was nervous, it was my inability to deal with, normal adolescence. And so I accepted that, and life carried on. And frankly, life carried on for about another 35 years. And I continued to have stomach discomfort, stomach pain. And frankly, it got to the point where it was interfering with my life, interfering with my sleep. And I really wondered if I could do anything about it. Well, um, I'm pausing here because it's an interesting thing. Interesting story in that I had a thought about Edgar Cayce. And I had read about Edgar Cayce when I was in college, and he was this big medical intuitive or psychic or whatever else. And I thought to myself, I wonder if there's an Edgar Cayce type person available in the world today that I can talk to. And I didn't have a lot of confidence, but I thought about it. And I still can't connect the dot on this one, but right after that, I happened to find a a seminar being given in Missouri with Carolyn Mace and Dr. Norm Shealy. And this was in the early 1990s. And I said, I need to go. So I went and I spent a week there, and it was a great program. But toward the end of the program, I went up to Dr. Shealy and I said, gee, do you know of a medical intuitive that I can talk to? And he says, I do. So he gave me a name. I flew home, called this individual, talked to him for a few minutes, and he said, well, you have a real physical inflammatory process in your gut, and you need to start there. So I called UCLA, made an appointment to the Department of Gastroenterology, went down, full battery tests, et cetera, and they came back and told me I had Crohn's disease. Now, for some people, that might sound like, oh, it's a disaster. You got this Crohn's disease and it's a mess. For me, psychologically, I was kind of excited because I had something I could work with. And so I, jumped on board with some biologics. I actually had a couple of surgeries and did whatever I could do to manage the ailment. But unfortunately, over the next 7, 8, 9 years, I didn't get any better. And I was kind of disappointed. And what am I going to do? So I called the medical intuitive back. Now, in hindsight, I should have probably called them sooner, but I waited 7, 8, 9 years. I'm a little slow sometimes in these things. But anyway, I did call him back. And I said, gee, here's my situation. And they mumbled a little bit. And he says, okay. And this is all on the phone. And he said, all right, you still have a physical inflammatory process. I see that. But you also have a psychological inflammatory process going on at the same time that's feeding the physical process. You need to work on that. You need to do both of them. I said, okay, so what do I do? He says, well, the process, I call it, is mental house cleaning. And you have lots and lots of excessive fear, shame, grief, guilt, whatever else accumulated throughout your lifetime. You need to process that. You need to work on that. That's an individual thing. So I said, okay. And for the next year and a half, I really dove into it. I took a lot of notes about my life. I actually wrote a little book about it for myself. And about a year and a half later, the pain went away. I said, the pain went away. It kind of snuck up on me and then it was gone. So I went back to UCLA, had a full battery test, and I was in full clinical remission, which was amazing. After close to 45 years, I was in full clinical remission. And so, and that was 12 years ago, and I am still in full clinical remission. Now, I do want to make it clear that I do take a biologic, but I also practice mental house cleaning on a regular basis. And at least for me, both are required for me to put Crohn's disease into remission. And for that great gift of those two pieces of knowledge, I am extremely grateful to the medical intuitive that work with me. Thank you.
Jim, thank you for that story. And some of you in the audience might relate to this. If you've worked with a medical intuitive and had information that you might not have gotten anywhere else, that's a very inspiring story. Thank you. Tracy, please share your story.
Yes. So I would love to share with you a story about my husband's journey, which he has lovingly given me permission to share. This is almost 15 years ago. He woke up one morning and sneezed, and his back quote went out. He couldn't stand up straight. He couldn't bend over. He was just stuck, couldn't walk. It was a horrible morning. So, because we leaned toward complementary and alternative approaches, he saw a chiropractor, an osteopath, an acupuncturist, and each of them brought great perspective, varying perspectives, offered treatments, and he got a little bit better, but it was also getting a little worse in some ways. And so he finally let me call a medical intuitive, i.e., or I just want you to note that, let me call. He was such a skeptic about medical intuition. He said, well, you call if you want to. So I called a medical intuitive, and she immediately was drawn to his lower back and perceived what she described as seeming inflammation between his L5 and S1 vertebrae. And I mentioned this to my husband, and when she said between, well, that sounds like a disc, and he said, well, no, 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 it's not a. Doesn't have to do with my disc because one of the practitioners already ruled that out. So he went on another few months in excruciating pain and let me call another medical intuitive, different one, and she was drawn to the exact same area in his back between L5 and S1. And in her words, she used the word heat. She said, I'm sensing a lot of heat in that area. So he decided to get an MRI. So lo and behold, the MRI came back, the doctors interpreted it and diagnosed him with a herniated disc between L5 and S1. And I would love to say that at that moment, he was a convert and he believed in medical intuition because the MRI showed exactly what two medical intuitions were pointing to. But he didn't convert that easily. But this was a very important experience and started to shift his worldview and started opening to the possibility that intuitively perceived information could be accurate. So, fast forward 15 years to today, and I'm delighted to share that he has joined me in turning to medical intuitives almost as pretty much as a first go-to and helping us just steer our way through choices and our health journey. So that's my husband's story of skeptic to believer.
Thank you, Tracy. And I love what you underscored about how medical intuition can help steer our
Mm.
clients and certainly patients to healthcare options that might work for them. And of course, the precision which you got from two different medical intuitives. All right, thank you for that. Kay, please tell us a case study from your practice, your long and storied practice, I might add.
Thank you, Wendy. I would just like to fill out a little bit about my background, which I did not mention that much in my introduction. Academically, I am a biologist and have a master's and PhD in biology from University of California, Berkeley. Primarily, the focus of that was and is comparative anatomy, both invertebrate and vertebrate. But as part of my training, I studied microbiology and studied parasitology and all kinds of other uh, wonderful studies come related to biology. So in 1999, I was contacted on the phone. I did a phone reading for a dentist. And this individual, relatively young individual, had a good, healthy lifestyle. However, he had experienced 5 coronary bypass surgeries, and he was wondering what in the world was happening. His doctors thought it was just stress, but he thought there must be something else to it. So I did my usual assessment where I went all up and down through his body, looking at the physical body, looking carefully even down histologically, down to the tissues. And I saw, intuitively, I saw an infection, a bacterial infection. And because of my background in biology, and I've studied microbiology, it seemed to me that it was a chlamydia, most likely chlamydia pneumoniae, which is famous or infamous for causing pneumonia. Well, here was a dentist back in 1999 who had been working with his patients without a face mask. In those days, the dentist did not wear any face protection. And I believe that he had inhaled this pathogen. So I told this to him. He then relayed that to his physician and asked for tests of his physician who was resistant to this, but reluctantly back in 1999. Remember, 1999, he was reluctant, but he said, all right, he would do the tests. He did the tests. They came out positive for chlamydia pneumoniae. He was treated with antibiotics for this and treated since then, as far as I know, even up to 2021, he had no further coronary problems. And he was very grateful that we were able to get to the proper root of this.
Okay, thank you for that story. And again, this is what medical intuition can offer, these mysteries solved. So that's a wonderful, wonderful story. I'll be brief with mine. This is a case study I do talk about a good deal because it really illuminates how the body holds on to life history, to memories, to information that can be hidden from our own minds. And many medical intuitives work this way as well. So my client was a businesswoman in her mid 40s. She came to me with a persistent case of tendonitis in her wrist. She'd had it for about a month. She'd seen her doctor, but nothing was working, and she wasn't aware of any obvious reason for this flare up. It wasn't something she'd really had much before. So for her, it showed up out of the blue. So I intuitively looked at her wrist and I saw the inflamed tendons. Directly beneath the tendons, I saw a fracture that had healed in the bones of her wrist. And all around her wrist, I perceived this energy of grief and emotional pain. So I have this conversation with the body, as many medical intuitives do. And I intuitively asked her wrist where this began. It showed me a scene from her life, and this experience was from her 20s, where she was playing tennis with her boyfriend. She swung her racket, she tripped and fell, and fractured that wrist right where I saw that fracture had healed. Now, the next scene I saw was her with her boyfriend in the hospital ER, getting her wrist seen to, and her boyfriend breaking up with her right there in the hospital room. So, what her wrist was showing me was that it not only stored the physical pain and trauma of the fracture, but also the emotional trauma of the breakup that was sudden and unexpected. Now, my client confirmed this experience. She had a memory of it. And then she told me that her current partner of 10 years had suddenly broken up with her about a month before, just before her wrist flared up. Interesting, isn't it? What her wrist had done was stored the stuck and unresolved grief and pain of that earlier experience, which was triggered by this current breakup. Now, this is a fascinating case study because her body had more to show. And intuitively, I saw her at 5 years old, huddled in a dark closet, and she had her arm raised in front of her face and a cane striking her wrist at that exact spot where she had broken it later in her life. And it was wielded by a woman who was really beating her. And what she told me at that moment was her mother was mentally ill, and she has memories of being locked in a closet and being beaten with a cane. And so this resonated for her. But what her wrist was showing us was that it held on to a lifetime, really a whole lifetime of grief, pain, and trauma. Now, although she had specific memories of these events, logically, our minds don't put this material together, right? Why would we think about that as a sequence that could lead to something like tendonitis later in life? But our bodies have their own point of view, and this is what medical intuition can bring: is the point of view of the physiology, the physical nature of the body, and the biofield. Now, at this point, her wrist indicated to me that these unresolved emotions and grief were the primary issue holding back its ability to heal and why it was so persistent. And a few days later, she called me and said the pain had completely gone. Her wrist was back to normal, which is a lovely outcome. But she said also, which I felt was really the biggest takeaway, was that she was able to process these unresolved feelings of grief and pain from her current breakup and from earlier life as well. And this case study is an example, I think, and everybody's here, of how much information the body holds and how it can potentially heal when given the information and the opportunity. So I hope these stories have been inspirational to you. They certainly are to us, and we have tons of them, and so do all the medical intuitives that are listening. We know you have stories, all the people that are listening that have worked with a medical intuitive, we want your stories. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment here. We're going to start the slideshow again. Thank you, everybody. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is why NOMI? Why come and join us? What do we have to offer you? Well, here are some of our goals. We are here to advance the field of professional medical intuition, to integrate the practice of medical intuition into mainstream healthcare, to develop code of ethics for the professional practice of medical intuition, really to keep you safe and the public as well. You meaning you medical intuitives. And we're here to create a dynamic community for professional medical intuitives and our supporting members as well, raise public awareness of the value of medical intuition, and support scientific research on medical intuition. And we hope you join us in our goals, and we'll talk about how you can do that. One of the very first recent things that we have created is a white paper called Medical Intuition, an Emerging Approach in Clinical Healthcare. And this is a comprehensive report on the potential use and effectiveness of medical intuition in clinical healthcare, and frankly, how medical intuitives have been using it in healthcare for many years. This will be distributed to clinics, hospitals, and healthcare organizations. If anyone in our audience is interested in this, please go to the excuse me, that's mine. Please go to nomimedicalintuition.org. Again, nomimedicalintuition.org, and that is under our resources page. So go take a look at that. Also, you'll find under our resources page our flagship research. And we did this in 2021 and published this paper in 2022, the use of medical intuition in healthcare. And what we did was we wanted to find out how medical intuitives are working in healthcare already. No one has really thought to ask that question. So a survey was sent out to self-identified professional medical intuitives in the United States. And we wanted to know, do they work with or receive referrals from licensed healthcare providers for medical intuition services? Are they themselves licensed healthcare providers? Do they have any interest in forming a national organization for this field? This is what we asked. And so here's some of the results that we received. Oh, by the way, we asked a whole lot more questions. And some of you have gone to our website and you have taken that survey, and we encourage you to do so if you're a professional medical intuitive so that you can continue to add to this research. And we will write another paper about this in the near future. So here's what we found in 2022. 82% of those we surveyed assist licensed healthcare providers with medical intuition services, and these are the kinds of licensed healthcare providers we asked about. Now, I have to tell you, this result blew us away. We had no idea that this many medical intuitives worked directly with licensed healthcare with their medical intuition services. We also found that 86% of these medical intuitives receive referrals from licensed healthcare providers for medical intuition services. Now, that didn't surprise us that much because medical intuitives, I think, have been working under the radar with physicians and other licensed healthcare for decades. And it was good to see that number because it really corroborated what we felt was accurate. 30% of these medical intuitives also identified as licensed healthcare providers themselves. 76% were interested in a national organization, which gave us the impetus to begin NOMI. And the survey, as I mentioned, is ongoing. Please go to the website. I believe it's on a few pages, including our front page, about how to take this survey. Now, for the public, what does NOMI offer? Our motto is awareness, education, and outreach so that people learn about this skill and start to think about integrating it into their own healthcare or into their practices. So we have a lot of published research reports and articles, and please, I think Linda is putting in the chat the links on the website where you can go. This is available to everyone. Our board members have written articles. We know our professional membership has articles, and we encourage that as well. Books, podcasts, and media on the research page, more coming. And by the way, in the books, we have a really great selection now of some of the main stakeholders and educators in medical intuition, some of whom are here today and who we are very grateful for. So go look there if you're interested in learning more about medical intuition. We have our NOMI quarterly newsletter, and we hope you join us for that. And we'll send out updates, information, and news as we go. We have a social media presence on the usual places, plus YouTube, and join us there too. You can share that information. And we're planning presentations for medical intuition at healthcare and educational centers. If you're connected with one, please reach out to us and let us know if we can give a talk or a presentation at your organization. And we are going to be compiling medical intuition case studies, just like the ones you heard, and what's called Tell Your Story compilations from our supporting members and our non-medical intuitives to tell us how it went for you, just like Jim and Tracy shared. This is actually really important. It adds to the understanding of what medical intuition does and how it can help everyone. This is our professional medical intuitive members directory. It is a searchable database with detailed practitioner information, direct links to members' websites, and more. One of the questions we get from the public most of all is, where can I find a vetted, reliable, professional medical intuitive? And NOMI aims to be that resource. Now, for our members, we have information to help you advance your career and your professional development, to gain a competitive advantage with our member benefits, which we will be going over in specific later in the program. You can learn all about our educational opportunities and networking opportunities, connect with a dynamic worldwide community to share information, challenges, triumphs, and more. You'll be able to access the latest information about industry trends and research, and become an active, informed presence in the emerging field of medical intuition, and gain access to uniquely focused resources, discounts, and opportunities you may not have had otherwise. And this last one I really want to point out, because this is open to every member we have, and that is to join NOMI's visionary team. And that will allow you to interact with the board, join our committees, join our task forces, help us with getting the word out and the incentives that we have planned for next year and beyond, and help us shape the future for medical intuition. Your interaction and your passion is what will drive and help NOMI thrive. So give that some consideration. I want to point out here that we have 3 types of membership for everyone. This is a growing dynamic community. We have our professional membership, and I will break this down later in the program. For professional medical intuitives, we have individual supporting members for everyone, whether you're a patient, a client, an advocate, just somebody curious about this. Healthcare providers and wellness practitioners, you're all invited to join us through our supporting membership opportunity, as well as organizations, clinics, hospitals, universities, etc., are invited to partner with us and help grow this field. The other thing we created pretty early on with the help of Midge Murphy is our Code of Ethics. And what is that about? We're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, but an overview here is that NOMI professional medical intuitive practitioners maintain high ethical standards, putting the client's well-being first. NOMI professional medical intuitive practitioners must have knowledge, skill, and technical competence, along with compassion, kindness, integrity, and commitment. And to learn more about our 14-point code of ethics, please visit nomimedicalintuition.org. And Linda, please put that link up in the chat. I want to point out again that our code of ethics is not regulatory for the field. It is, and something we're going to discuss with Midge, ethical conduct for medical intuitives so they can keep themselves safe in their practice and not gain any, understand their liability risk as well. So now we are going to invite Midge to join us. This is Midge Murphy's book. She is the author of Practice Energy Healing in Integrity, The Joy of Offering Your Gifts Legally and Ethically. And I'm going to introduce you, Midge. Midge is an energy healing practitioner and the first attorney to receive her PhD in energy medicine from Holos University. Midge has a deep understanding of both the law and the alternative healing arts. And for more than 15 years, Midge has been providing consulting services to both practitioners and training organizations. And she's considered the leading expert in legal issues, ethics, and risk management strategies in the practice and training of biofield-based practices. Midge's book and her exam that goes with the book and her certificate is considered the gold standard in the field. So we are delighted to have you join us, Midge. Thus, we can't wait to learn what medical intuitives, medical providers, and everybody needs to know about this. So let me start with our questions. So let's start with this one. Midge, how do medical intuitives fit into the current regulatory framework that governs healthcare professionals? Because we know it's out there. How do we fit in?
This is really a threshold question, and it's a really good place to gain an understanding about where medical intuition fits into the healthcare field. And actually, medical intuition falls under the umbrella of complementary and alternative medicine, or CAM, which is now being kind of transitioned, as you mentioned earlier, into complementary and integrative health. And in that broad umbrella, I love the consensus term that Michael Cohen came up with in his book, Future Medicine. He says CAM is a consensus term that means everything outside of bio-Western medicine. So that's actually a huge amount of practices and technologies and services that are offered, anywhere from chiropractic medicine, acupuncture, naturopathic medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, shamanic practices, energy healing, energy psychology. There's just a huge plethora of different kinds of offerings that fit under the CAM umbrella. So medical intuition actually fits under the biofield practices, and some use it as a healing tool as well. But I think when you look at CAM in general, the only physician or only practitioners who are licensed in all 50 states are chiropractors. And then there are some practitioners who are licensed in some states and not in others. And that would include things such as naturopathic physicians, massage therapists, and actually acupuncturists. Though I think there's only 2 states now that don't require you to be licensed to practice acupuncture. And then there's this whole group of us, including myself as an energy healing practitioner, where we're completely unregulated. And the only exception to that rule is in some states, if you use touch, talking about Reiki, I'm a therapeutic touch practitioner, healing touch, quantum touch, then they require you to be a licensed massage therapist in order to practice in that state. And I'm not going to go into the sort of that's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense for that. But medical intuition in particular is a completely unregulated profession. And so that's where we're not really even at the table yet when it comes to integrative health. And that's why I think NOMI is so important. And those of us who are really committed to bringing medical intuition into mainstream healthcare. But right now we're kind of on the fringe and we're not inside the circle yet. We don't have a seat at the table. And so this is what we're trying to get to as we move this field forward in a more professional way.
Thank you for that. Yes, and there's a lot of people in our audience and around the world that don't want regulation either for biofield practices, and we're not going to get into that right now, but it's really important for us to know the lay of the land, and thank you for that, Midge. So let me ask you, what are the 2 most significant legal risks a non-licensed medical intuitive faces in offering their services to the public?
Well, there's 2 that I want to address today. The first one is, and I'm just going to speak basically about the United States. I know we have some participants from outside of the country, but the biggest risk, legal risk that non-licensed practitioners face is being charged with practicing medicine without a license. And this is huge because all 50 states have medical practice acts. And if you are perceived as practicing medicine without a license, it's a crime. And I'm really not trying to create any fear. I really want you to think about being empowered by this knowledge and being curious about it. Because of what I've found over the last 15 years I've been doing this is when you bring up legal issues, a lot of times people just like freeze and they're like deer in the headlights. And it's like, take a deep breath. This is all manageable. I'm all about managing risk. But it's important to have knowledge and understanding how it impacts your ability to offer your services to the public. So why is medical intuition considered the practice of medicine, or could be, without a license? First of all, you have to get an understanding about how medical practice acts have been adjudicated and processed throughout the United States. And if you look at Medical Practice Act, They're very broad in their scope of what is considered the practice of medicine from a legal standpoint. And so as our system has moved forward, and I think everyone would say the AMA has pretty much a kind of a grip on what is the practice of medicine. Just to give you a little kind of hint, when chiropractic medicine was first coming on board, they were throwing chiropractors in jail for practicing medicine without a license. Until such time as they were able to create a very professional practice and to gather together, and now they have their scope of practice, which is different than the practice of medicine. So how courts have kind of interpreted what is the practice of medicine, it's basically any kind of healing work is considered the practice of medicine. So one of the biggest risks we face, and this is the risk I face as an energy healing practitioner, is that we have to be careful that we're not being perceived as practicing medicine without a license. We're going to go into some risk management strategies a little bit later, I think, that I want to share with you because that's really important. But I think just using the word medical puts a red flag over our heads. And so we have to deal with that issue. And there's definitely ways that you can deal with it. The second risk I want to bring up today is most medical intuitives have websites. And what their biggest risk is they use claims or they have testimonials on their websites that are in violation of Federal Trade Commission rules and regulations about how you offer your services to the public. Now, the FTC is the regulatory agency that governs how people advertise their products and services to the public. That's a federal agency. And of course, most states have consumer protection acts. So a lot of medical intuitives get themselves into trouble or potentially could get themselves into trouble by how they describe their services and what kind of title they may use. The term medical intuitive is usable, absolutely, if you have certain disclosures, making it very clear that you're not practicing medicine, you're not going to diagnose or treat any medical or psychological conditions. That has to be on your website. But here's a myth that I've run into over the years, and that is you have a client who wants to provide you with a glowing testimonial, and these are great. However, what people don't understand is that a client testimonial is not protected by the First Amendment, meaning that they can say whatever they want and they have freedom to do that under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is the free speech. Because once you use a client testimonial in your website, it becomes a form of advertising. And therefore, it is subject to the rules and regulations of the Federal Trade Commission. Now, if you make any kind of a claim in a client testimonial, what the FTC requires is competent and reliable scientific proof. And what does that mean?
Can
Yeah.
I ask you a question here? We all have testimonials on our website, but what you're talking about are medical claims of curing, right? Curing?
More than
Cures?
that.
More than that. Okay.
More than that. More than that. So that's part of it, Wendy, absolutely. But some people will say, let me give you an example. I went to this medical intuitive, I had terrible insomnia, and I went to this medical intuitive, and now I don't have insomnia anymore. Well, there's a problem. First of all, insomnia is a medical condition. And according to the laws and regulations, only licensed healthcare professionals, mainly physicians, can treat insomnia. And in some places, obviously, psychotherapists can as well. So you've already put a red flag over your head, because if a licensing board were to look at that, they'd say, what do you mean she's curing insomnia? That means she's practicing medicine or psychotherapy without a license. So it really is important to really be very careful and mindful about how you use your client testimonials. So there's more than just that. So also just using words that are problematic from a legal standpoint. So as a medical intuitive, if you're not licensed, you never offer treatments. You just offer sessions. You never work with
readings,
patients.
right? Or
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah. And so you don't have patients because it's a matter of perception. If you don't do therapy, you're not doing treatments, you're not diagnosing, you don't have patients, because all of those words, the perception is you're offering some kind of licensed healthcare services. And that's what we need to avoid in order to reduce the potential risk. There's risks involved in being a medical intuitive from a legal standpoint. How do we manage them? How do we sort of tamp down the level of risk that you have. And so that's what I'm all about. And I talk about this extensively in my book. I have a whole chapter on websites and marketing your medical intuition or energy healing practice and what you need to be aware of. And again, a website disclaimer is important for your website. So those are the two major legal risks I think that non-licensed medical intuitives face, is that being charged with practicing medicine without a license, or getting into trouble running afoul of the Federal Trade Commission rules and regulations about how you advertise your services.
That's super helpful. And of course, all the medical intuitives in the audience are now going to look at our websites from it with a different perspective. Thank you for that. Obviously, we want testimonials, and I think Midge is making a really important point here. So let's talk a little bit more about risk management strategies. I want to point out that all our professional medical intuitives who join us in our requirements is that you have a disclaimer on your website that says this is not the practice of medicine, this is an informational process, etc. So that was one thing you pointed out. Is there anything else that you can tell our medical intuitive practitioners about what can help them lower any kind of legal risk?
I'm going to say, first off, be a member of NOMI.
Thank you.
I mean, being a member of a professional organization is critical because it brings credibility to you as a professional. And that NOMI has ethical standards and ethical code of ethics. So that's really important. It makes you look more professional, more credible. If you're ever a licensing board or an unhappy client was going to look at you and think they want to file some kind of a lawsuit against you. So I think being a member of a national organization is an excellent risk management strategy. The second piece is, another one I would mention, is to have a legally sound client agreement. Really, really critical, because not only does that create the energetic platform in a written legal document that describes you and what you offer, it can protect you if you're ever questioned, because you can show, look, I don't diagnose, I don't treat, this is what I do, this is my legal document that describes what I provide to my clients. Secondly, it really helps clients understand what it is you actually do. Where we get in trouble sometimes with our clients, if we don't have a legally sound client agreement, there can be misunderstandings where the client thinks they're going to get this and this and this, and they're not, and they don't, and then they get unhappy because there wasn't clear communication. And so a legally sound client agreement is important for not only being in service to your clients, but also to protect you from potential legal liability. Now, it's important to understand that every practitioner is unique. And so it really should be done by someone who is competent in drafting. I have never yet met any of my clients over the years I've been doing this that knows how to write a legally sound client agreement. It's a really technical document, and it's important that it protects you. So seeking legal help is, I think, really important, or risk management help around your client agreement. Now, the other thing I want to mention, there are states here that have healthcare freedom laws. And there are about 11 states that have those. And let me tell you a little bit about them, because I think if you're in a state in which you practice and that you have a healthcare freedom law, then that is highly beneficial to you as a medical intuitive. It's a huge risk management gift, actually, to have. So what is a healthcare freedom law? Let me give you an example in California. Obviously, consumers want to access us. And in California, they call them alternative healing arts practitioners. So they passed a law in 2007. It said, we recognize that our citizens, our consumers, want to access these alternative practitioners. However, we know that those practitioners are under this dark cloud constantly of being charged with practicing medicine without a license. So we're going to create this little safe harbor for them. And we're going to pass a law that says you can offer your services to the citizens of California as an alternative healing arts practitioner if you are in compliance with this particular law. And it's pretty straightforward. It's like, okay, you're not going to diagnose anything. You're not going to tell someone to stop taking their medications. You're not going to do x-rays. You're not going to set fractures, all the typical things that you would think of. And as long as you have a client agreement that contains these elements and it's signed by your client, and you have to keep it for a minimum of 5 years, and you have to disclose on all your marketing materials that you're not licensed by the state of California, then you can freely practice without that big, huge cloud over your head of being charged with practicing medicine without a license. So one of the things, the risk management strategies, is be aware of and understand the laws and regulations in your state that apply to you. That's critical. It's about being empowered and knowledge so that you know what it is and what regulations apply to you. So, but I have to tell you, of all these years I've been doing this, and I have clients coming in, and California now, or one of the other states, Minnesota, New York, Nevada, Colorado, and they say, I say, are you aware that you have a healthcare freedom law in your state? Most of the time they say no. Sometimes they say yes. I have yet to encounter one who's in full compliance with the law before they come and engage my services.
Wow. What I'm hearing from you, Midge, is that there's still a lot of misunderstanding or not clear, unclear from practitioners in this field about what their state laws and county, I guess, even laws allow them to do or don't allow them to do. And we encourage all of you to go out and look and see if your state has healthcare freedom or what the rules are around complementary and alternative practices in your state. Thank you for that, Midge. I also want to point out that NOMI offers another legal risk management strategy, and that is insurance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Having
Okay.
professional liability insurance is good business. It's also a risk management strategy. Some of the other things that I want to mention is you really need to have your website audited. What do I mean by that? Is someone that knows what they're doing, takes a look at the contents of your website and make sure that you're not inadvertently creating a legal problem for yourselves. A lot of people have on their website language that would create a legal guarantee, such as you will feel better after 3 sessions or something like that. So that's not just FTC, but it's also, are you using words that could make you look like you're practicing a licensed healthcare profession, but are you inadvertently creating a legal guarantee? So that's really important to make sure that, and that's your biggest risk factor mainly, is because you're very visible, and the FTC has a task force that is specifically looking at any kind of new innovative products and services around healthcare, because there are a lot of vulnerable populations out there, people dealing with chronic health conditions like diabetes, people that are dealing with being overweight, those kinds of things. So the other thing that I want to mention, and which is Wendy said was a disclaimer. Well, what is a disclaimer? Well, a disclaimer for a website is the legal document that governs the relationship between you and any visitor to your website. So it can really protect you, make it clear about what it is you're not offering, making it clear that just because someone comes and is interacting with your website, that they now your client, and all different kinds, and that they assume all responsibility for whatever they take away from your website, the information, assumption of risk, release of liability, all the kind of legal stuff that are important when you're offering your services to the public. And then the other one I want to mention is to get as much training as you possibly can. I know some people have been self-taught. Other people have been doing this for a long period of time, many years, and they've never gone to a class. But from a perspective, from a legal perspective, how the government looks at us as complementary alternative practitioners is that they're looking at what kind of training do you have? And that's just the way our system works. So having training is a good thing. If you're interested in becoming a medical intuitive, then I would certainly look for a very robust training program that's legitimate. I mean, what courts don't like, what regulatory agencies don't like, is if you hang out a shingle, because it's completely unregulated, you hang out a shingle and says, I'm a medical intuitive, and they come after you and they say, well, what are you doing? And they say, what's your background in training? And you say, well, I read a book, or I went to a
Sure.
weekend workshop. That doesn't make you look very professional in terms of the eyes, how the regulatory world, the agencies look at you, licensing boards, and the courts of law. So training is important. And I think as we move forward and bring medical intuition more into the mainstream healthcare field, that component is going to be more exaggerated and important. And the other thing I would certainly recommend is that you get certified, not certified, but a certificate of completion in ethics and legal issues and risk management strategies. This is what I offer with my book and exam, but it's a professional credential that also makes
Yeah.
you look more professional and more well-trained if you have this training in ethics and legal issues. Because here's the bottom line. medical intuition is not going to be integrated into our healthcare system unless medical intuitives can show that they've been trained in ethics and legal issues. Every single licensed healthcare provider, that is a critical component of their training. In fact, everyone who's out there who's licensed and they need to go get their license renewed every year, every 2 years, ethics is always part of the continuing education requirements because it's so important in terms of how you offer your services to the public and how you handle the therapeutic relationship with your clients or patients in an ethical manner. So that's going
Yeah,
to be really important.
I would agree with that 100%. And for our professional members, when you get your professional member area private web page, you're going to see opportunities to gain ethics training, certificates, including Midge's program. We are all about that, and we feel that that's a really important part of this. So, Midge, thank you for highlighting all of that. Now, I'm just going to point out that we have time for maybe one or two more questions. We want to make sure that we get questions from our audience as well. So we're going to kind of skip forward here just a little bit. But you can see what a fountain of information Midge Murphy is for our community. And we're going to do more videos with Midge about these various aspects of this field. So you can also reach her at her website, midgemurphy.com. So let's talk about what should the public look for? Because again,
No,
we
Wendy,
think
I need to talk
you
about
do.
people who are licensed. I'm
Okay,
not going to leave out
that's
that
that's
part.
important. So
Yeah.
let me just introduce this topic, okay?
Okay.
So what we're talking about are licensed practitioners that also are medical intuitives, and we do have a supporting member opportunity for you guys.
So basically, medical intuition is not considered part of the standards of care or scope of practice as it's defined legally by medical practice acts. So the biggest risk that licensed practitioners face is that you could be subject to professional discipline for practicing below the standards of care or outside your legally defined scope of practice. So how do you mitigate that? It's important to be able to understand with your board, how do they, what are their requirements around offering complementary and alternative medicine therapies in your practice? So be aware of what it is that you need to show. You can't abandon the standards of care, but you certainly could integrate that. And I think a lot of licensing boards now do have, are open to that. But let me tell you just briefly in Oregon where I'm at, and that is if you want to bring a CAM practice into your medical practice, you have to demonstrate to the board that you have been thoroughly and completely trained in that particular modality. So that's critical for the licensed folks to make sure, again, that they've had the training and they can demonstrate that to their board.
Yeah, I just want to interject and say what Midge is addressing here are licensed medical practitioners of every kind that want to use their medical intuitive skills with their patients. Is that correct?
Yes,
Uh,
correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so the other piece is make sure you understand what it is under your own licensing statutes, how they approach CAM methods with you as a physician or a licensed healthcare professional. Besides being trained, I really recommend that you have a separate informed consent for medical intuition. I think that's important because of the power differential that's inherent in all therapeutic relationships, but maybe even more so with the licensed folks that deal with patients. And that is what we don't want it to appear is that your enthusiasm for medical intuition somehow becomes coercive to the patient because that you may just bring it up spontaneously in an appointment evaluation with the patient, and they may say yes, but only to kind of please you. They maybe don't really understand it. So I think it's important to have a separate informed consent for medical intuition because that means you know that the client or the patient is really wanting this service, and this keeps it looking that you're not exploiting the power differential in some way. And you don't want to be a voyeur. You don't want to start to do a medical intuitive scan in their biofield and not inform them because that's not getting informed consent, and that's not okay. It's highly unethical. So I think for you guys, it's important to just make sure you know what your board requires, make sure you follow the requirements, and have a client informed consent or patient informed consent, excuse me, for medical intuition, and to make sure that you have the training. And of course, what boards are looking for is certification. We're not going into certification today, but in terms of licensing boards, those are the credentials they're looking for in terms of training.
Understood. It's very important information for our licensed practitioners in the audience who are also identify as medical intuitives. Can I ask you quickly, and I know we're running out of time here, and I know we want to get to some questions, but there are a lot of clinicians who want to work with medical intuitives and bring them in. Can you briefly tell us what they need to look for?
That's certainly a great idea to have a referral source of a medical intuitive if the patient is wanting that. Again, when that referral is given, you have to do your due diligence as the licensed professional to make sure you're referring to someone you feel is competent, highly professional, has integrity, understands ethics in a therapeutic relationship, and that you have vetted and feel that they are really a good fit and that they're professional in a way that you feel comfortable referring your patients to them. Now, what the medical intuitive and what you should require as a licensed professional who's going to refer to a medical intuitive is that they have a client agreement for services. That's critical. And then, of course, what's one of the yummy things that can happen is the medical intuitive does the reading for that client, who's also this patient on this side, and that maybe the doctor or the licensed professional wants to be able to talk to the medical intuitive about what transpired. And so this is pretty common in terms of what we call the release of authorization agreement that the patient and client, they're kind of wearing two hats there, sign, so that gives permission for the medical intuitive and the licensed professional to talk together about the particular patient and also what was learned or could be helpful in terms of that patient's care under the licensed physician's services.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And we're also talking here at NOMI about bringing medical intuitives into clinical care, not just as referrals, but as staff and faculty. And we're seeing that more and more. And of course, our research showed that. So, is there anything briefly that anybody needs to know about that picture?
There's a thing in the law called vicarious liability. And I think most licensed folks, especially physicians, know that, and this is a well-established principle, that whoever is under your supervision in your clinic, in your practice, you are legally liable for them. So again, it's really important if you wanted to hire a medical intuitive as part of your team for integrative health, then you want to make sure that they're well trained, they've had training in ethics and legal issues, that they've been in practice for a while, that you feel extremely comfortable referring or having your patients go to see the medical intuitive if that's something they want. So it's like you can do massage, you could have an integrative health clinic that could involve like an acupuncturist and maybe a psychotherapist and a medical intuitive and an energy healer. I mean, there's all kinds of permutations. But I think because you are legally liable for that person as a staff member, you just want to do your due diligence and make sure that, again, you have a separate agreement for those services as a patient-informed consent for medical intuition, but also that you've vetted them and you're comfortable with their level of professionalism and integrity.
This is just a wealth of information from Midge Murphy here. And finally, our last question, and before we start to take a few questions from the audience, is I think you've kind of covered this, is what should the public look for? It sounds like all of those things, yeah?
Yeah, it's about due diligence. And I think one of the great things about the directory is I would advise anyone who's interested in engaging a medical intuitive would be to go to the NOMI practitioner directory, because you're going to look at their different profiles and get a sense of maybe they feel right to you or you like their credentials and you're feeling comfortable with them. And again, I would say look at their website, look at what their education and training is around medical intuition. And a lot of medical intuitives also incorporate other kinds of practices. They have sort of a conglomerate of, or a tool belt, I call, of different services that they can offer. And so making sure there don't seem to be saying things that are like too good to be true. I mean, really vet their level of professionalism and integrity of how they're describing their services and what their website looks at. That kind of gives you a real sense about their credentials and who they are. And so those are the kinds of things, yeah, you should be looking at their training, their background, their websites, and all of that will help you make maybe a better choice about what kind of medical intuitive you want to engage. because this is important. It's a very intimate relationship, really. And so it's important that those boundaries are very ethically held, and that this person's going to be working with your biofield. So you want to make sure that you feel safe and that they have integrity and training and ability to work with you in a therapeutic setting.
That's such great food for thought and such great advice and guidance on this skill set and how it can integrate for the public, for healthcare. Midge, thank you so much for this wonderful experience. And I know we have a lot more to talk about. There were so many things I wanted to pick out of what you said, and we don't have time for that today, but we will do more with Midge Murphy. And we have time for a couple of questions. So I'm going to ask Elizabeth, who's been watching our question and answer, if there's any particular questions that you feel would be great for Midge to answer. We probably have time for maybe one or two of those.
Oh boy, I wish there was time for a lot more, a lot
Well,
more
we'd be
questions.
going all afternoon and
I
evening, unfortunately.
know.
We'll have to do this again.
Well, just following up on the last piece that Midge just talked about in terms of licensed professionals, the question around that was, what about people and the HIPAA guidelines who have licenses? Are there requirements within the HIPAA guidelines that people also have to follow?
Well, I can't give you any specific legal advice, but I've written an article about this. It's a blog article. It's a really interesting question because as probably all you know who are licensed, you're called a covered entity under HIPAA law around confidentiality and privacy. And however, if you're operating like myself as an energy healing practitioner, I'm not licensed, so I'm not covered by HIPAA. But if you're a licensed person that maybe even has a separate coaching practice, or it's not clear under the law if you have to be specifically HIPAA compliant, but you should be. First of all, there's, to me, that's kind of a wash of a question in a way, because all of us who are offering our services to the public, our healthcare services to the public, whether licensed or non-licensed, is that we have a legal duty of keeping their privacy and confidentiality. And if we breach those ethical standards, we will be sued for invasion of privacy or breach of confidentiality. So I think it's not really clear. If you're operating under your license, yes, you have to be HIPAA compliant. If you're not operating under your license, maybe I do work with a lot of psychotherapists who have separate coaching practices. And for them, it's just use the encrypted for your Zoom calls or whatever you're going to do. Technically, you still have to maintain their privacy and confidentiality. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and actually HIPAA compliance is not that hard. It
Yeah,
mostly the challenge is in when you're doing video conferencing and things like that, and media and the audios and things, because medical intuition, we deal with people's medical issues, right? Their healthcare issues.
yeah.
Is there another question, Elizabeth, in the queue? I'm sure there are many.
There is, relative to that same area that Midge was talking about. If you're a licensed practitioner, do you have to have a separate business in order to utilize CAM?
It really depends on what it is you're really wanting to do. I have a lot of people who want to work across state lines. And as you know, as energy healing practitioners or medical intuitives, we work with people's biofields. They don't have to be physically present with us. And so some licensed folks decide they want to set up a separate CAM practice and offer their services across state lines. We have to set up a completely separate business, separate client informed consent, and we have to make sure it's very clear in our documentation. That's my cat. That even though you are a licensed physician in the state of Illinois, you do not offer any kind of medical services. You will not diagnose or treat their medical conditions at all. So it makes it very clear that you're only offering your services as a health coach, maybe, or something along those lines. And I've helped a lot of licensed folks do that. And again, if you want to bring in a CAM policy or CAM method into your license practice, then make sure that you've done it properly and that it's okay with your board to do that.
I love these questions, and I think we can go really deep with them. Mitch, I'm going to ask you, can you stick around to the end of the program, because we will have another QA session with the board, and we'd love for people, if they have questions for you specifically, that you can answer. We'll
Sure.
do that then. So thank you so much, Midge
You're so
Murphy.
welcome.
We're
Thanks for
so
having me.
delighted to have you. And you can find her at midgemurphy.com. She has her website, has a wealth of information as well as her book, her exam, and we're just so happy to have you here. So we're going to move forward with the program, and I know you all have questions, so we will have time at the end. So stick around for that. How to join NOMI and what kind of memberships we offer, and I'm going to go over that briefly. So we actually have more time for Q&A at the end, and I hope you've all been enjoying this presentation. All right, here we go. Our professional medical intuitive membership, NOMI welcomes medical intuitives who are trained, who are mentored, or who are self-taught in medical intuition. Meaning, if you have a practice and you can meet our requirements, we're delighted to have you, and we can go over requirements a little bit later, but let's talk about the benefits. You get your listing in the NOMI Public Directory of Professional Medical Intuitives. And again, this is the biggest question we get. How can I find a valid and qualified medical intuitive? Join our visionary team. Again, if you're inspired by this conversation, please come and join us. Help us shape the future for medical intuition. I know we all want the same thing, and that is to practice safely and legally and out there in the world. So we don't have to do anything other than that. People understand who we are and what we do. We have an exclusive professional members only private web page where we post all kinds of information, ethics training, and also educational opportunities. And we've put on the website there for you guys uh, anatomy and physiology training for anyone who thinks that's important to them. You may not, and that's perfectly fine. But we're looking for you to expand your practice and learn more. And again, here's this next piece is the video library of field experts. We're bringing in people not only with legal risk information, as Midge Murphy has given us, but also marketing and business tips, how to grow your practice, how to get out there in the world and promote your business. We're going to bring that in too for our membership. Enhance your practice. I just mentioned that. Affiliate discounts, and we have our professional practice insurance discount for people in the United States through the EMPA. We are also going to be affiliating with people from out of state, out of the country as well. All right. And our professional member badge you can display on your website and marketing materials. And the opportunity to contribute your articles, your research, and your case studies. Those of you who've been in medical intuition for a long time, you have a lot to offer. We are going to be creating a private LinkedIn group for our professional members to build your community, connect with colleagues, and of course, participate in surveys, research, and special projects. We're always looking for more of that for our membership. We have two kinds of individual member supporting membership, and this is for everyone. Anyone who'd like to see medical intuition as an integral part of your healthcare. We invite patients, clients, advocates, as well as health and wellness providers support our mission. Here's what you get. As a member, you get our supporting members only private web page with a lot of resources and information to help you bring medical intuition into your world. And we're here to help you with that. You get your supporting member badge to display on your websites and the opportunity to contribute your personal stories, as we talked about earlier. This is a very important compilation that NOMI is spearheading to get this out there into the world. And you can participate in surveys, research, and special projects. In fact, Tracy, I think her study from some time ago was part of this promotion. And you can join our visionary teams as well, join our committees, join our task forces. So we also have organizations supporting membership. If you're interested in the expansion and integration of medical intuition into healthcare, education, and research, if you are part of a hospital, clinic, or educational or research institution of any kind, we want your partnership. And here's what we can offer you: a supporting members only private web page, white papers, resources, and information to bring to your organization or your field. Your organization's logo, link, name, and description will be displayed on our website as partners. You get your badge and discounts on individual supporting memberships or professional, if that's appropriate, to your staff, your faculty, your members, and your student base. We're delighted to offer you that to grow the partnership. And of course, you can participate in surveys, research, and special projects and join our visionary teams. And we look forward to that very much. So you can also donate to NOMI. Thank you so much for your contribution, and your generous donation helps us achieve our goals. So what we have now, looking at the time, oh, we've got lots of time. Good. Lots of time for QA. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share, but I want to say thank you to all. And we're going to keep going with QA for the board. So let me stop the share. And board members, please come on back online along with Midge. And we're going to go ahead and open the floor to all you wonderful attendees. We are just so delighted to have had this opportunity to speak with you, to engage with you, and hope you've been engaging with each other in the chat as well. So Elizabeth, please tell us, what does our audience want to know and how can we help?
People were asking if I wanted to be a medical intuitive,
Yes.
are there specific requirements?
I appreciate this question because it's extremely important. First of all, we look for a public presence that identifies you as a professional medical intuitive. You have to have a fee-based practice, and this needs to be a standalone, dedicated medical intuitive practice. For instance, if you go to my website, you'll see that I offer several things. I am a trained healer. I'm a trained medium. I'm of all of this. However, I offer medical intuitive assessments alone as an individual service. And then if a person wants to have a healing, then that is another individual service. Your disclaimer on your website is so important. And that disclaimer must be clear in that you are not diagnosing or prognosing. You must be at least 18 years of age, which of course most of us are, 18 years of age. And there's a one-time application fee of $25, and then the annual membership fee is $125, which is very reasonable.
There were questions about what if I'm, say, a Reiki healer or another type of biofield healer, and that's the vehicle through which I get my medical intuitive information. Would that qualify me at the professional level and or supporting level?
Well, I think there's two parts to it. One is the healing practice. So, as a healer who is offering services under that umbrella of Reiki, if intuitive information comes in while you're giving Reiki, then that would fit our supporting membership. The professional membership is for those who have a standalone practice.
I want to address a little bit of what you talked about in terms of having an energy practice and a medical intuitive practice. It's important because a lot of medical intuitives are also healers, and we recognize that and we honor that. If your practice is primarily a healing service rather than an intuitive assessment service, we make a distinction there. And I think, Lloyd, if you want to say another word or two about that.
Yeah, having that standalone assessment gives us access to information that we wouldn't normally have. And so having that standalone practice is kind of critical, especially if you're working with a provider. As a provider, I don't want any other healing in that session. It could be done at another time, but for my purposes, I would just want that assessment.
So this allows our medical intuitives the ability to integrate into any healthcare setting. That's really the bottom line, and to build this bridge between medical intuition and the medical community's needs. And that's what NOMI is focusing on, is the broader understanding of medical intuition and how it can be integrated. So I hope that helps people understand. And again, we have supporting memberships for anyone, no matter how you practice, and we want you to be on our team here and help bring this forward.
I saw there was a follow-up question by the person who asked this question about Reiki, and I wanted to guide them to our website where we have very detailed FAQs, and you might find more clarification in there. And if you don't, if you feel like that's still not answering your question, please contact us.
Another question was, it appears that there's some perception that the membership is only open to nurse practitioners and physician's assistants, and not to other registered healthcare professionals, licensed healthcare professionals.
Well, I'm sorry if that looked that way. That's not correct. Anyone can join us, which is wonderful. One of the founding things we wanted to put in place here was that this is open to everyone. If you're interested in staying current with medical intuition, join us as a supporting member. If you're currently training to become a medical intuitive, you're in school or you're taking classes, join us as a supporting member. Take a look at the website and see where you fit. And if you have questions, please ask us.
Another question, I think this really is for Lloyd. If you have if you have a healing practice or you are a licensed healthcare professional, what do you specifically need to make sure you do to keep your profession as a medical intuitive separate?
Well, I am a licensed doctor, MD in California. I am in the process of getting certified, and that's kind of the challenge right now is to figure out how to incorporate medical intuition into a traditional practice. And I'll probably be consulting with Midge on that, on how to protect myself in that field, but I'm excited to do it. But yeah, I am a family doctor licensed here in California.
We have a question that actually has to do with integration, and it came from a physician.
Okay.
And he's asking what kinds of conversations is the organization planning to do with the medical profession, with physicians, et cetera, to get the integrations.
The medical intuitive directory, somebody asked about visibility for that. And as we go live with that, we certainly have a plan as far as optimizing for that to be picked up through search engines. So that's part of our process. So it will get the visibility that it needs. Looking at 2025, we would like your help in getting the word out as far as medical intuition, but we're available as well. So if you represent a medical organization or a large group or even a modest sized group, and you'd like to contact us about potentially doing an hour program or something on a Zoom call to your audience, we would be happy to do so. It's something that's certainly on our agenda. This is going to be an organic growth process, and we all have to participate to get the word out appropriately.
Yes, and I want to point out that we've already been doing that, and we plan to do a lot more of that, as Jim says. Lloyd and I last year were very privileged to do grand rounds at UCSD to their integrative health department, and we're available for that.
There was a question about whether people ask for intake surveys from clients or not prior to doing a medical intuitive session.
Yeah, I think not necessarily with respect just to medical intuition, but if you're not a licensed healthcare provider, you have to be really careful about what kind of information you ask of your client. Because if you're taking some kind of a medical health history and you have it written, that can end up hitting you in the back of the head, because a licensing board would say, well, you say you're not licensed, you're not offering any kind of licensed healthcare services. Why are you asking about their medications? That's personal health information that is covered by HIPAA. Why are you asking them about their surgeries? All these kinds of questions puts a red flag over your head, because that intake form then can be discovered in a lawsuit and can really make it appear that you are practicing medicine or psychotherapy without a license. So what I encourage my clients to do, especially more that work with the meridian tapping techniques, where they're helping people feel better about themselves, or maybe release some limiting beliefs, those kinds of things, then it's important that they can ask questions. Is this a good fit for me to do this kind of work with this particular individual? Or would they be better served by actually working with a psychotherapist? You can talk to them and you can get a sense of what it is that you're needing to know, whether or not they're a good fit for you, without having a written record of it. So I'm not a really big fan of any kind of intake form for unlicensed practitioners.
One of the biggest questions, multiple questions, are what's the value of membership for people outside the USA?
There are so many medical intuitives all around the world, and we invite you to join us. Because we are focusing our legislative efforts on the United States, we wanted to name it national organization, but this is a worldwide community. And I know we have people here from New Zealand, from Canada, from the UK, from all over the planet, and we welcome you. You are invited to be a member of any kind with our organization. On that note, I'm afraid we have to end. I know we could talk for another hour about all this, and we are so grateful for you being here and joining us in this important conversation. Thank you to our board, thank you to our advisory board, and thank you to everyone who's joined us here. We hope to see you again, and we hope that you would contact us and become members of NOMI. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much, everyone.